So the samskaras are the old abstractions and limiting concepts of the way that we see the world. Okay? And the yoga tradition says that we accumulate these samskaras, and there's lots of them in terms of, maybe it's thoughts and beliefs about the relationship we have with our parents, or in terms of ourselves, in terms of, well, maybe I don't feel worthy enough to have a relationship right now, I'm a bad person, whatever it is, okay? Anything where there's a limiting concept and there's an emotional response attached to it will be considered to be a samskara. Now, the more that we track these what's called samskaras, okay, and this is just the yoga word for it, okay, there's other words for it as well, yeah? So in psychology they call it issues. Yeah, you've got issues, right? Got stuff, okay? Now, in the yoga practice, what happens is the more of these that we acquire, what happens is as we acquire them, they begin to numb the sensations of the body. Okay? So that this stuff, which is actually emotions, and emotions are energy, and these emotions actually they're like vibrating particles. Okay? If we experience emotions and that we don't let them flow through the body, because your spine is designed to be like a lightning conductive rod. Okay? The emotions are supposed to flow up this central channel and out. If they don't, if they're stored in the body, often in the emotional brain, we talked about the emotional brain a little bit this morning, okay? If they're stored in the body doesn't quite know what to do with them. So, the body, think about, so if somebody gave something to you, and you didn't have anything to do, you didn't really want it around, okay? You didn't really want people to see it, but you didn't have any way of throwing it away, what would you do? You'd probably lock it in a cupboard somewhere, yeah? You put it under the stairs, where you didn't want to look, okay? And that's very much what the body does, okay? It stuffs these stuff into the joints, into the muscles, okay, into the tendons, into the areas of the body that perhaps aren't being used fully, okay? It doesn't usually stuff things into the areas that are being used. It says, okay, well, that area seems to be an area that we don't access very much, whatever it is. Maybe we're so used to sitting here, okay, in our office, on our chairs, okay, that we don't actually access the hip sockets anymore. We never actually sit on our bum and let our hips open. So the body says, well, you're not going there, so in which case I can put it somewhere where you're not going to find it. So that way it's out of the way, okay, and it'll be much easier to deal with life. So the body says, in its infinite intelligence, it shoves it in the hips. And then when you come to your yoga practice, and you're moving into your hip sockets or whatever it is, you begin to feel, perhaps, emotions begin to arise within the body. Because what the body is doing, and what the asana practice is doing, because what we're saying here is that the body has become numb to sensation. And if we can feel sensations, there's a chance we might be able to experience something bigger than just the world. Okay? So bigger than just going to work, 9 to 5 work, the humdrum of life, whatever it is that kind of you get stuck in the mud about, right? The yoga practice says, if you can begin to explore the sensations of the body, because the sensations of the body are what's real, okay? Everything else that you see is not truly real, because what you see is something that you project upon it, okay? We very rarely actually see something for the way that it is. What we see is our projections onto it. So when we meet somebody, okay, we immediately begin to, we very rarely ever see them for who they are. We see projections. Maybe that person reminds me of my father, and immediately I have a dislike for him. Or whatever it is. Maybe we see that person and they're slightly overweight, and I've always felt self-conscious about my own weight. So we begin to project our own samskaras, our own stuff, onto the world. And very rarely actually experience it for what it is. Okay? And this is what the yoga practice gives you the opportunity to do. And it does that by saying that the sensations you experience in the body are real, you can't escape them, okay? And they get you grounded, because the body is actually the only thing that's here in the present moment. Everything else, including the mind, and particularly the mind, is somewhere else. So when we're thinking about things, okay, the mind can never be present. The mind is either in the past, looking at what happened before, or it's in the future, looking at what could be. We're either analysing behind and looking back, remembering, maybe regretting, or we're looking in the future thinking, what if? Okay? The only time the mind can be in the present is when it is still. And so the practice of yoga, so the first line of the Yoga Sutra, if you ever looked at Yoga Sutra, it says Yoga's Chitta Vritti Nirodha, which is that yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind. Which is to say that yoga practice is stilling the mind. Because when we still the mind, actually our awareness drops into the core of our own heart and we begin to see things for the way that they are, rather than the way we have come to think them as. Okay? And this is what the asana practice is actually trying to get you to do. It actually tears the body open. Okay? Literally, in some cases, it takes you into areas so that you can explore fields of sensation. Okay? So that you can begin to awaken the sleeping aspect of your body. For some of you, the psoas was asleep this morning until we woke it up. Okay? Which is why I call it awakening the psoas. Okay? So you move into the areas, you take consciousness and life into the areas that have become numb. And it is hoped then that as energy flows into those areas, it gives you greater possibility to explore the higher aspects of who you really are. Okay? Now, that's just a precursor really to the really juicy stuff. Okay? Now, in the Hatha Yoga tradition, so Ashtanga Yoga is Hatha Yoga. Okay? So I know you hear about Hatha Yoga classes, Ashtanga classes. Hatha Yoga and Ashtanga Yoga is Hatha Yoga. It's just an approach. Okay? We happen to do what's called a vinyasa, and vinyasa means breath synchronized movement. Okay? We happen to do the asana practice in that way. I happen to think it has a great deal of merit, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's the way it should be done. Okay? So yoga itself is like a mountain. Okay? And think about the top of the mountain is whatever the goal of yoga is. Now, some people would say that the goal of yoga is would be enlightenment, okay, to reach the state of samadhi. Okay? And the yogis saw that the way to samadhi was to awaken this kundalini, this energy that's stored below the navel, and to actually, so that this energy began to move up this central channel, and it was said that if the energy was able to reach the crown of the head, what's called the sahasrara, which is the crown chakra, then enlightenment would follow. Okay? And that samadhi, which is the state of bliss, absolute, complete, unconditional bliss, would follow. And they saw that as the goal. Sounds pretty good to us, yeah? We'd like a bit more bliss in our lives. I hope.